we're gonna break down hormone sanity. How many of you feel like you're going insane, you're going crazy, you don't recognize the stranger in the mirror, or you just don't know what's wrong with you? Well, these are stories that I hear day in and day out at my practice at Center Spring MD. And I think people really have a tough time understanding what's a hormone symptom versus what is something else, right? And oftentimes, and I bet you're guilty of this, oftentimes we'll just chalk it up to getting old or being stressed or some other excuse that you've heard before. Well, I want you to stop all of that, because you're not getting old, and no, it's not in your head. And yes, there might be something happening, but we're here to help you understand the how and the why behind it and how you can maybe recognize it. Well, here's some common hormone symptoms that I see over and over again in practice. So if you're experiencing any of these, don't assume that it's just getting old. Something is wrong and shifting, and you need a good partner, a medical partner, to help you get to the bottom of it. First of all, your weight, a vital sign. If it's shifting in either direction by more than 10 pounds, you may have a hormone imbalance. That's right, there's so many different hormones involved in weight and involved in metabolism. Again, if you want to check out one of my videos on weight and metabolism, remember I've got so many videos on how hormones influence weight and what they may or may not be doing. But weight is something that you should be paying attention to. Now, some of us like to weigh every day. Some of us have a lot of anxiety around weighing every day. You do you, and you do what works for you. I actually am one of those people who get a lot of anxiety weighing myself every day, because I went through a phase where I got obsessive compulsive about every number every single day on the scale. So here's what I do. I actually measure my inches, because that's a great way to really figure out where your waist is, where your hips are, kind of what's happening, but not so caught up in all the anxiety and trauma of actually getting on the weighing scale. So just a little suggestion there, but weight is a big one. The next one is looking at your sleep patterns. I think, again, sleep, people will say I'm just stressed or I have too much going on, but if you are having trouble sleeping, specifically, if you are waking up between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning, then you might have a hormone imbalance. We know that cortisol levels spike at that time, especially in conditions where progesterone levels are low or where the thyroid's not working properly. So it's really important to pay attention to that and understand when your sleep disturbance is. So 2 to 4 o'clock in the morning, you could definitely have a hormone imbalance if you're having trouble sleeping during those times. All right, let's talk about another one. This is one people come to me with all the time, and often they want ADD medicine because they're experiencing brain fog. And this is not little ones. I'm talking women and men, by the way, in their 30s and their 40s, even going into their 50s, where they can't focus, they can't concentrate. And that could also be a hormone imbalance. When thyroid levels go off, testosterone levels go off, we know that there's a lot more cognitive issues for both men and women. Women in particular, when their estrogen levels fall, experience a lot more of the sort of cognitive fatigue. They can't remember their words. They're searching for answers for questions that were very easy for them before. So paying attention to your brain fog and your ability to focus is yet another sign or symptom of having a hormone imbalance. All right, now some obvious ones: hot flashes, night sweats, oily hair, acne, right? All of those signs and symptoms of hormone imbalances for sure. And libido, good old libido. So many women come to me, and men, complaining about their libido and wondering what happened. And yes, it could be your hormones, and no, it's not in your head. All right, so how do we get out of our heads? How do we get out of is it me? Is this happening? What's she saying? And get really tactical and tangible so that you can kind of start to assess this on your own. And that's what I want you to be able to do in this video after you've been able to assess the symptoms. Now, of course, I want you to have a good relationship with the doctor. Again, an east-west approach that I preach and love, or an integrative approach, is really going to be your best bet, because it's going to look at the whole picture of your hormones. But here are some of the things that you can do at home. Let's start really simple. Everyone has one of these, right? Who knows what this is? A thermometer. You probably have it if you're a mom for your kids. I bet you never use it on yourself. Here's why a thermometer is helpful. You can take your basal body temperature. You can do it under the arm, you can do it in your mouth, and you can track it and see what's happening there. If you're someone whose temperature is falling consistently below about 97 degrees, you may have an issue with your hormones, specifically your thyroid hormone. So that's a great way for you to track, keep maybe a journal or a log, record them at different times of the month, and see where you're averaging. On the other hand, again, if it's high, if it's above 99 or like 98.8, then you may have an overactive metabolism or hormone system, and that's something to pay attention to as well. Now, while we're talking about that number, the next one that's going to serve you well is your blood pressure. Really paying attention to blood pressure is so important. Again, conventional medicine talks all the time about just being worried about high blood pressure, but Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Eastern systems of medicine really talk about the whole spectrum, right? Not just not being sick, but also being superpowered and optimal. Where does blood pressure fit into that? If your blood pressure is low, you're dropping below about 100 over maybe 60 or so every time you go to measure it, you may have adrenal fatigue. Because with adrenal fatigue, the blood pressure drops, and usually cortisol dysfunction is all over the place. So we know that you're more likely maybe to pass out, to have dizzy spells, to get low blood sugar in addition to low blood pressure, because the adrenals are stressed and weak. Again, if your blood pressure is way too high, that's a whole another story. Your thyroid could be off, you could be insulin resistant, and your estrogen could be way too high, predisposing you to cardiovascular issues. So again, I keep talking about the sweet spot, not getting too high, not getting too low. Same is true with blood pressure. It's important to track it and understand where it is. So these are cheap, right? Cheap and easy to do. Get the stuff at the drugstore. You can measure it on your own. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated, but something you can do to really understand what's happening with your health. Let's move on. We're gonna move on to this little gadget, also available at the drugstore. You might be thinking I went to like this fancy medical supply store and got all this stuff. Not true. CVS, Walgreens, right here. All right, this is a pulse oximeter. You can stick it literally on your finger, see what your oxygen levels are doing, but it also gives you a rhythm sometimes of what your heart rate is doing. So you can look at your heart rate and your oxygen level and track patterns there. Now, if you're not having a good steady heart rate and you see little blips there, you could have a hormone imbalance. Guess which hormone is responsible for that? Low progesterone levels can do that, and thyroid hormone, when it's imbalanced, can do that as well. So having a little pulse oximeter with that has a little heart rhythm on it, that can be helpful for you too. All right, if you're having to use this, I had a patient the other day, she whipped one out of her purse. It was a tiny one. She was just like, if you're having to use this, please see one of us. You have a hormone imbalance. More than likely your estrogen levels are all over the place and you need help stat. All right, one more fun gadget that I love using. Who knows what this is? I love all my toys, but this one, we're gonna say it 5 times. This is a trichoscope. All right, can you guys say that? Trichoscope. Trichoscopes look at where you may have hair loss. Now, do you need to go buy one of these? No, but your doctor may have one, because if you're suspicious that you're losing hair, this is the most objective way to know, because you can actually measure and look at hair density in different places on the scalp and know if you're losing hair. Hair loss is such a hormonal sign, right? And it tells a story in itself about what your hormones may or may not be doing. Remember, if you're losing from the crown, you could have a thyroid issue. If you're losing right here at the temples, it's usually estrogen or progesterone. If it's just falling out completely, then oftentimes that's nutritional or related to blood sugar and insulin levels or the androgens. Remember, I have lots of videos on hair loss. Please check those out. We dive into these patterns and triggers for hair loss. Check those out right over here. But again, this trichoscope could serve you well if you're trying to get really objective with how much hair you're losing and is your hair a sign of overall hormonal imbalances. All right, I've got one more, and everybody has one of these now, including my kids, but I'm sure they're not using it to check their hormones. But any sort of Fitbit or Apple Watch or tracker nowadays is tracking your sleep and your sleep quality, right? If you go onto the sleep sort of program on here, it will tell you how much REM sleep you're getting, how much deep sleep, superficial sleep you're getting. Here's a great general rule to follow. If you're not getting at least 90 minutes of REM sleep, you may have a hormone imbalance. This takes us back to cortisol, thyroid, progesterone, testosterone, and even insulin, and trying to understand and isolate what's happening. So what do? I would have these tools at hand. I would keep your own health journal, record and see what's happening, know your own normal before you even worry about normals for everybody else, and really put that data together to see if there's a pattern there. And that'll take you out of your head and stop you from thinking you're going crazy, and really help you with getting answers and educating maybe your doctor about what's going on with you. And using these tools, these are actually Western medicine tools, right? But using these Western medicine tools and marrying them to Eastern philosophy, that's where we get our answers. That's the holistic way. That's the East-West way. And that's what's going to be the future of medicine. All right, now remember, I post new videos every week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys soon.